I'm delighted to present Professor Catherine Barnard, Professor of EU Law and Employment Law at the University of Cambridge, Senior Tutor of Trinity College, and Deputy Director of the UK in a Changing Europe, an independent research organisation created to communicate academic research on the UK's relationship with the EU. As part of the project Building Bridges, Professor Barnard has produced a study on mobility issues for the UK and Spanish nationals post-Brexit. Professor Barnard, welcome.
Well, thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here.
As you have shown in your study, Brexit has had an extremely negative impact on the mobility of people between Spain and the United Kingdom. Could you outline the situation for those who took advantage to move before the end of 2020 and those who intend to move today? I mean, what challenges do each group actually face?
Well, thank you for that. So I think what we'd say is before those who moved before 31st of December 2020, which was essentially Brexit Day, they had their rights protected under the withdrawal agreement. And for Spanish nationals in the UK, this meant having to register, probably for the first time, either for settled or pre-settled status. And this is the jargon terminology to cover those who have done either more than 5 years in the UK or less than 5 years in the UK, settled status for more than 5 years, pre-settled status for less than 5 years. And for those who've only got pre-settled status at the moment, they must apply for settled status at the end of the 5-year period. Now, that is being challenged before the courts at the moment to see if it's compatible with the withdrawal agreement. That's the divorce text. But at the moment, the situation is that they must apply for settled status at the end of 5 years. For UK nationals in Spain, the situation is somewhat different. Most UK nationals living in Spain will have already been registered, will have had to apply, and probably got one of those green cards. And fortunately for those British nationals, the green card continues to give them residence rights until it expires. They're encouraged to apply for the new residence card, a biometric residence card. But at the moment, they are still protected. And so the Spanish system is slightly different to the British system, partly because Spain, of course, has always had a system of registration. Anyone in Spain knows their NI or their NIF off by heart. That's not the case in the UK. And so Spanish nationals will have had to register for the first time. So that's the group who came prior to the 31st of December 2020. I should say there are still issues with those who didn't apply for settled status or pre-settled status by the deadline. The UK is taking a reasonably indulgent approach at the moment to those who applied late, but nevertheless, they had to show that they were in the UK prior to the deadline. For those people wishing to move after the deadline, i.e. from the 1st of January 2021, what you see is an entirely different legal regime, which has got nothing whatsoever to do with free movement. And what you see is that if you want to travel to Spain or to the UK for a holiday, at the moment it's visa-free, and you can come for 90 days in any 180-day period. Now, that's fine for a lot of people who are thinking about their 2-week holiday in Mallorca. But for those British nationals who like to spend the winter months in the Spanish sunshine, it's suddenly become a lot more difficult because they can only come from, say, October to December. They can't stay from October all the way through till March or April because that would exceed their 90 days out of the 180. Likewise, Spanish nationals can come to the UK for the same period, but the crucial question is, can they work? And the answer is with a lot more difficulty. The rules are complicated. They're laid down in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. That's the new trade agreement. And the Trade and Cooperation Agreement essentially allows certain groups to come for a short period of time. Those groups go by different labels, and the rules are complicated because even though it looks like you can come, you then need to look at the end of the agreement to see whether Spain, for example, has opted out of the rules laid down in the TCA. The crucial point is in essence, you can only come for a short period and to provide services. This is not about migrant workers anymore. All of that's been turned off. So if you want to come and work, i.e. as an employed person employed by a Spanish company in Spain or a British company in the UK, then you need to apply for a visa under UK or Spanish immigration law. And both national systems are pretty demanding, and it is not easy by any means to be able to work in the other country for those who arrive after the 1st of January 2021.
Well, thank you for that. And in fact, if I could just turn your mind back again to something that, as you mentioned, which is perhaps closer to people's minds. I mean, will British holidaymakers see many changes when they return to Spain this summer in large numbers? I mean, not just on the movement side of things, but also, the duty frees and everything.
Yeah. So in fact, they won't see radical change if they haven't been in Spain for the previous 90 odd days. There will be longer queues at airports. They won't be able to go through the EU queue and get waved through. They will have to go through the third country national queue, and that will take longer. Yes, we already know that the rules on duty free have changed. Healthcare is the other issue, and with emergency treatment, that is still covered. It's still covered under the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. British nationals will be able to rely on their existing EHIC, the European Health Insurance Card. And if they haven't got that, they can apply for the Global Health Insurance Card, which gives them broad coverage in the same way as they had under the EHIC for emergency treatment. Now, I emphasise emergency treatment. This is not an entitlement to travel to Spain to get healthcare, to try and avoid queues in the United Kingdom for long-term conditions. It is really for emergency treatment. So if you break your leg while you are diving, then that will be covered on the EHIC.
Well, thanks for letting me know on that, and I shall take that into consideration before I leap off a tall cliff. But actually, following on from that, has Brexit made it more complicated as well for Brits to do business in Spain?
Well, I think the answer to that is yes. We don't know to quite what extent, because COVID, of course, has made significant difference in terms of limiting free movement. So the full impact of Brexit is not yet being felt, and still travel is much less than it was before, partly because of the COVID effect, partly because people have discovered that they can do a lot more business online, and that does save significant amounts of money. And also, of course, it's better for the planet that people are travelling less. But the reality is, if you want to come on a short-term basis to talk to your business partners in Spain, you can probably come as a short-term business visitor, and there the conditions are relatively relaxed. It becomes a lot more difficult if you're thinking about British nationals trying to, say, accompany a British tour party to Spain, because Spain has derogated from the rules as far as that is concerned. The other question is how much enforcement there is of these rules. The UK is very hot on enforcement, and the penalties for non-compliance with the immigration rules are really, really serious. The question is, to what extent has the Home Office, the relevant government department, got the resource to enforce all of that? What we see is that there's been a privatisation of enforcement. So, for example, if you, Alan, wanted to come and do a PhD viva in the UK and you only hold Spanish nationality, you don't have the right to work in the UK, universities will crawl over the position you find yourself in, because the universities are very worried that they may be found to be in breach of UK immigration rules.
If I may continue, given the need to respect the limits imposed by EU law, are there ways in which Spain and the UK might be able to help alleviate some of the current limitations under the Trade and Cooperation Agreement? In fact, do you think that such solutions might be usefully proposed in the present climate, though, between the EU and the UK? So even though there may be the solutions, perhaps there isn't the interest in doing so at the moment.
So as far as potential solutions are concerned, in an ideal world, the answer is yes. And that's because immigration issues are largely still a matter of domestic competence, which means that only the Spanish government or the UK government need to agree to this. It doesn't need the permission of the EU. That said, the EU is taking a very close look at anything done by states to give some sort of preferential status to UK nationals. And everything is meant to be cleared by the EU. Now, up until 2 or 3 weeks ago, the mood music between the UK and the EU was extremely hostile, and it seemed extremely unlikely that anything was going to be achievable in the short to medium term. Obviously, events have happened very fast. The terrible situation in Ukraine has shown that the UK and the EU are able to set aside some of their antipathy, and they have been working more effectively together. Whether this has a knock-on effect on mitigations for Brexit remains to be seen. The question then is, if there is a better mood music, what might be done? One of the striking things is that Spain, unlike a number of other countries, does not allow for dual nationality. And so UK long-term residents in Spain will find it very difficult to apply for Spanish nationality because they will have to relinquish their UK citizenship. Spain does, however, allow dual nationality for a number of countries, Latin American countries, but also Portugal and most recently France. And so the question would be whether the Spanish government would be prepared to extend that to the UK as well, which would be of significant help, I think, to the 300,000 or so UK nationals living in Spain. The UK, I should say, does allow for dual nationality. Another possibility to accommodate those British people who've been living for a long time in Spain is that you've got to have done 10 years residence in Spain before you can apply for Spanish nationality, whereas countries from Latin America, you only have to wait for 2 years. In the UK, you can apply after 5 years. Might Spain be prepared to consider a 5-year rule rather than a 10-year rule? So those are the immediate things that might make life somewhat easier for UK nationals. And then there are other possibilities which get more complicated. One possibility is to have more lenient conditions in respect of recognition of professional qualifications. Now, there legally it becomes more tricky because professional qualifications has arguably become an area of EU competence because of the Mutual Recognition of Qualifications Directive. But certainly for anyone who's moving after the 31st of December 2020, that would be a really important step forward. And then the question is, if you don't want to go down those routes, are there more generous arrangements that could be envisaged? For example, a youth mobility programme, because what we do know is that youngsters are missing out on opportunities for living abroad, not for all of their lives, but for a year or two working in Spanish bars in one of the costas, and also for Spanish nationals living and working in the UK. Again, it would improve their English, but also they would often pick up work in bars and restaurants where there is currently in the UK a severe labour shortage. So it is possible to imagine a permutation of outcomes. Some people say what we should be arguing for is something like free movement minus, i.e. coming down a bit from where we were when the UK was a member state of the EU. Politically, I just do not see that on the table. I think we've got to recognise that where we're at the moment with the TCA is GATS plus, and by GATS plus I mean the General Agreement on Trade in Services, which is a WTO agreement. What you see in the TCA is marginally better than that. And therefore, what you want to be looking at is, can you have GATS plus plus in some form of arrangement with Spain, rather than trying to advocate what many people, for understandable reasons, want, which is to have a sort of free movement minus.
Well, thank you for that. And in fact, this brings me on to my final question, if I may, Professor Barnard. And that really is to ask you, how do you envisage the issue of mobility is likely to evolve in the midterm? And can Spain help play a constructive role in easing restrictions between the UK and the EU?
For the UK, the migration issue is neuralgic. It is, for people who voted leave, the principal reason that they gave was to try and control immigration. And from that point of view, the Leave vote has been very successful. EU migration to the UK has dropped off a cliff. Although it must be said that the UK has discovered that there were many more EU nationals in the UK than they ever thought. The UK government thought it was about 3 million. And we know it's somewhere closer to 6 million following the applications to the settled status scheme. It probably isn't 6 million as such, because there will be people who've applied who are not entitled, and there are people who've applied who've gone home anyway and don't intend to come back. We saw a lot of that during COVID. But nevertheless, there are significantly more EU nationals in the UK than had been thought. Spain had a better idea of how many UK nationals were in Spain because of the ID card system, on the registration system. What could Spain do to help? Well, I mean, leading by example and showing what is possible in terms of bilateral arrangements would be a very good thing. And of course, the UK and Spain have a very long history, which significantly predates EU membership on both sides. And there's a commonality of interest between the UK and Spain. They're both seafaring nations, and nations which have what they would claim to be a global outlook. And of course, Spain and Spanish nationals, Spanish food are all hugely popular in the UK. And of course, of all of the countries in the EU apart from France, Spain is the most visited. I mean, the figures of UK nationals coming to Spain on holiday, it's about 18 million a year, absolutely astonishing number. And so people in the UK like Spain, get Spain in a way that they don't get other countries. And so Spain could lead the way going forward in showing what is possible to negotiate while trying to avoid the pitfalls of both British politics and the scrutiny of the European Commission.
Well, Professor, evidently we've got a great deal of work ahead in building bridges. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you very much again for your time today.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure talking to you.